I guess we're ready to get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Janelle Van. I'm down here in Tampa, Florida. Thank you guys for joining me today. We are going to be introducing you to the RPR CMA throughout today's presentation. A couple of housekeeping items. I also want to introduce you to my good friend and colleague, Umberto. How are you today, Umberto?
I am doing so well, Janelle. Thank you for asking. I think it's morning time still in California, but
It
it's
is.
like lunchtime for us or a little bit past.
Yeah, 2 o'clock my time down here in Tampa, Florida. It's hot as can be outside, about 90 degrees. But I'm happy to be with you all. This is a 90-minute class. So if you are interested in learning more about some of the RPR classes, we do have an entire RPR webinar series. They're on a national level. We will show you where you can access our classes live, or you can always watch them on demand. Today is one of 12 different classes that we offer as part of the RPR webinar series. This is the only class that we teach here at RPR that's actually 90 minutes because the CMA is quite the process. And we try to research the subject property a bit in advance and kind of factor in all of the different things that could affect a pricing strategy or a list price conversation with a seller. But everything I show you today can be absolutely used for our buyers as well. So if you're working with a buyer, you're getting ready to make an offer, equally as important that you put together a nice CMA for your buyers, just like you would for your sellers. So thank you, Elsie. Let's give her a big shout out. Thanks for having us today. Again, I'm down here in Tampa. Umberto's in Texas. You all are in California. I do have a great property that I picked for you. We're going to analyze all of that in great detail. So let's get started with Price It Like a Pro, RPR CMA Secrets Unlocked. Before we go ahead, oops, that's not what I wanted to show. Hold on a quick second here. Here we go. Um, Before we get started, let's go ahead and just make sure everybody's on the same page with our agenda. We're going to start off with some pricing tools. We're going to go through some of the different pricing strategies that you have access to in RPR, specifically our refined value tool. What you are going to find in RPR that's unique in our platform as opposed to other sites is the valuation model. We give you a valuation model for a subject property that's either actively listed or off market. And what makes that valuation model, it's called the Realtor's Valuation Model or the RVM, unique, is that it's going to include MLS active, pending, sold data, as well as public records sold. So those buy owners, those family transfers that may not ever make it to the MLS, what we're going to do is include all of that data in our valuation model. So it's always a great place to start looking at your valuation model and then kind of going from there with pricing a subject property. We're going to look at our refined value tool. That's also unique to RPR. You can take a valuation, and if you don't agree with it, you can refine it based on your knowledge of the market, the property, the location, the condition, interior and exterior. So it's a kind of a really cool tool, especially if you're meeting with a seller. Maybe they just did a major renovation and you want to kind of go through the process of how to price the property based on their recent updates and improvements. We're going to go through the whole CMA five-step process. I'm going to start from the end. I'm going to show you the finished CMA. I have been in real estate for about 35 years, and I have never found a more professional, comprehensive, easy to craft CMA than you will find here on RPR. Now we are going to also look at how to find comparables using some advanced searching and custom geographies. I'm going to take a look at your local market, and we're going to also analyze market trend data. And remember, a listing presentation is a job interview. You're basically going on an interview to see if you've got the marketing campaign, you know the market, have the market knowledge that the seller is looking for, and that you've got a good pricing strategy. Now, when I'm working with a seller, I always try to say to every realtor, it's probably best practice to come up with a price range rather than a very specific price until you've had the opportunity to walk the property, make sure there's nothing that stands out as needing to be fixed or improved upon before it goes to market. But most importantly, just remember it is a conversation between you and your seller. So what I always recommend is that you kind of have a range in mind, you've got your CMA ready, but that you kind of leave the final pricing to the time that you're actually sitting in front of your seller going through the property. Ultimately, we're going to land on a very polished professional CMA. I also want to let you guys know we can create a CMA from the desktop, which is what we're going to be working on today. But you also have some great CMA features available from our mobile app as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Now, RPR, if you're not familiar, we are Realtors Property Resource, and we are a national database for both residential and commercial properties. RPR is going to give you the ability to research property data, market data, school information, neighborhood information, climate risk analysis, flood zones. All of that is accessible for you. So if you are working with a buyer and they ask you any of those questions, you should be able to answer those either from the RPR mobile app or from the desktop. It really is a one-stop platform for all of your research and business development plan, because we do offer 2,000 mailing labels per month as part of your RPR membership. You also get a tremendous amount of marketing materials and reports that you can customize, share to social media, your website. There's just a lot of great resources for you on the RPR site. There is no consumer access, and my favorite thing is there's no additional charge. Everything I show you today is completely included as part of your NAR membership. So all of the AI scriptwriter tools and the reports that you have access to are all part of your NAR membership. Now, that's a quick overview about what RPR is. Now, I'm going to talk about our pricing tools. And at this point, I'm going to go off camera and just let everybody know one more time that we are recording today's webinar. And Umberto is here if you have questions. Now, we've left the chat open. We've also got the Q&A open. So please don't be shy. Send us your questions. That gives me an opportunity to kind of slow down, kind of gauge where you're at in the process, and maybe back things up if you missed a step. In terms of the RPR pricing tools, there's three that I really want to point out. Obviously, there's a lot of different things that go into a suggested list price or a suggested offer price. These are some of my favorite pricing tools from the RPR mobile app. Not only can you create a manual CMA, but you also have the ability to create an AI CMA. So all you have to do is select the subject property, tap on the AI button, and you can create an entire CMA for both a buyer or a seller using our AI tools. Now, the other cool thing you can do with RPR is that refining the value. We're going to look at an RVM in RPR, that Realtors Valuation Model, and we're going to apply some basic upgrades and improvements to refine the valuation. So that's something that's very cool. We're going to walk you through that process today. And then the third pricing tool is obviously going to be our comparative analysis. Now, you can create a CMA for a buyer. You can create one for a seller. It's a very simple 5-step process where we look for comps, we rank our comps, we score our comparables, and then we go ahead and deliver a beautiful finished CMA to our clients. And remember, this goes for both buyers and sellers. Now we're going to talk a little bit about that RVM. I'm going to go through a few more slides and then we're going to launch into the live site. The RVM, that Realtors Valuation Point, is a starting point for pricing. It is definitely not your end all for a pricing strategy, but it's a great place to begin. It's one of the most accurate valuation models available. It is exclusively available to realtors. Consumers do not have access to RPR or the data that we offer. And again, what makes our evaluation model unique is that it's going to offer you the ability to refine it based on your knowledge of the local market and the property condition. Now, I want to spend a few moments here on the RPR mobile app, because what you can do from RPR mobile, especially when we're talking about creating a CMA, the QR code is on the top right of your screen. If you want to go ahead and grab that, you can download this. From the mobile, you can create a beautiful buyer's tour. So let's say, for instance, we've got, let's see, Raf is in our class today. He is hearing an echo. So if there's an echo, let me just remind everybody, if you accidentally clicked on the link to join today's webinar, you are going to get an echo. The only way to solve that is to log out and just come right back on in. Zoom has made it kind of tricky for us, well, not us, but for our attendees. If you accidentally click on the link 2 times, you are going to hear an echo. So definitely log out, log back in. We're not going anywhere for quite some time. Now, for the mobile app, remember the QR code is on your screen. You can create a buyer's tour. That's going to give you a side-by-side view of the properties that you're getting ready to show. Side by side the public record data. It's also going to give you a feedback form to share with your buyers. So before you get started showing property, I always recommend that you create a nice buyer's tour. Then you can go ahead and text that, email, or airdrop it to your clients. prior to getting ready to show them houses. So there's a lot of great functions on the mobile app. You certainly can search for properties that are actively listed, properties that are for lease. You can easily toggle from residential to commercial if that's something you're interested in learning about. And you can also easily search public record data. So if you've got a buyer and they're really excited about making an offer, but they want to know about the house next door or the house across the street, what did it sell for? How big is it? You can answer all of those questions from the mobile while you're still showing the property. Now, as you can see on your screen, the mobile app is multi-layered. We have an outstanding national webinar coming up tomorrow if you're interested in learning how to build the AI CMA on mobile. We have a national webinar. And if we have time towards the end of class, I might be able to give a sneak peek into that if everything just goes perfectly smooth today. Now, we also have great reports that are available. That is how we exchange data on RPR with our clients through our reports or through our scriptwriter tools. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like a little bit later, but grab the QR code, make sure you've got the mobile app downloaded. Now, on the mobile, you're also going to see the ability to craft those CMAs, and I just wanted to show you a quick screen grab. If you are working in an area that you're not super familiar with, we don't want you to lose the opportunity to get that property listed. So you could easily go ahead, tap one AI button, and you can see on your screen, it's going to score the comps. You can even add your own comps. And like I said, this AI CMA is exclusively available on the mobile app, and it can be created for both buyers and sellers. So super important that you have that mobile app downloaded. This is the subject property that I have selected for you today. I am going to work on a subject property that is off market. Its location is 13537 Morning Mist Way in the zip code 91709. It's got a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, single family residence with 2,531 square feet. This property last sold for 685 in 2013, and look at the valuation now. The RVM for this subject property is over 1.3 million. So that's a huge increase in valuation from what they bought it for back in 2013 to what it's valued at as of July 18th, 2026. Now, this is the subject property we're going to be working on. I just want to remind everybody that we are recording today's webinar. So if you have any questions at all, let Umberto know. And while I'm going to check in with Umberto and just pull up this property and see, are there any questions at this time, Umberto?
There was a really good question in the beginning if we might go over the mailing feature today. I put that maybe yes and no, but I wanted to leave it up to you.
Yeah, of course we can. Yes, we
Sure.
will do that. I promise. So stay tuned. I know this is a
Great.
long class. I want to remind you all, though, we do offer 12 classes on a national scale. So anytime you're interested in joining us, they're free, they're Zoom. So all you have to do is just kind of log in, sit back, enjoy the presentation, or you can always watch our classes on demand. But since that was a special request, we'll certainly make time for that today. So thank you for that. Now we're going to begin on the RPR homepage, and I just want to shout out to everybody on the call today. When you log into RPR, you should see on the top left of your screen your broker's logo. If you do not, that just means your broker has not set that up, and it's so easy to do. It doesn't cost them any money, and it only takes about 10 minutes of their time. So when you do log into RPR, if you don't see your broker's logo, go ahead and let Umberto know, and he will share a link. The reason this is important, not really when we're doing the work in RPR, but when we start creating client-facing material, we want that broker's logo front and center. So make sure you check in on the RPR site for your broker's logo on the top left. And then over on the top right, we've got our personal profile. We want to take a few moments, click on the drop-down arrow on the top right of your screen, click on profile, make sure your photo, your logo, your contact information, phone number, email addresses, websites, all of that is updated. Also, make sure you include your license number. This is again is a professional CMA, or all of the reports are going to feature a cover letter. You want to make sure all of this information is accurate. Don't leave out that license number. You guys worked hard for that. So make sure you include that on the cover letter, and then you just simply click on save, and we are good to go. Now I'm going to begin with my finished product. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take you over to our reports tab. Again, this is the RPR homepage. Lots to unpack here. We've got an intro class that really goes through every tab that you're looking at on your screen, but we're going to stay focused on our CMA. When I go to my reports tab on the top of our screen and I click on that drop down arrow, you'll notice at the top you have three options. These are my reports that I've created. These are the RPR templates that you have access to, and then you can customize them and make them your own and then save them as your own templates. So these are reports. These are the RPR templates that you can design and make them your own, and then they would be saved as your own templates. Now, if I'm going on a listing presentation, I'm looking at 9 different residential reports that I can choose from, and every one of these serves a different purpose. Obviously, for today's presentation, we're going to be working on our CMA. But if I'm going on a listing appointment, that's not the only report that I plan to bring with me. I'm going to include my CMA. I'm going to bring a property flyer. That's a one-page flyer that I'm going to use to show my seller that I'm going to blast this everywhere that it's possible, whether it's online or through a direct mail campaign. I'm also going to bring a neighborhood report and a school report. The reason that I bring these different reports, I also like to bring either a market trends or a market activity report, because these reports not only are useful for educating your sellers or your buyers, but they're also part of your marketing strategy. They're very easy to craft, customize, and then share. So obviously, when I'm on my listing appointment, I need to go over the comps. I need to have my CMA ready, but I also want to kind of show them what I'm going to do to get this property sold. And I believe any realtor that's taking advantage of some of these reports and the data that goes into them is really going to have an advantage against their competition. So remember, every one of these reports serves a different function. You could go down to the bottom here, and there's a quick tutorial on how to pick the right report. Every one of these, though, can be customized and immediately shared to your website, your social media platforms, or even your blog. Or, of course, you can easily email or share that with your clients directly. Okay, so that's our reports. I want to go into my reports over to the left. And I want to show you when I clicked on my reports, these are all of the different reports that I have created recently. This is the CMA that I created for 13537 Morning Mist Way. Now, this is something that's brand new today, believe it or not. We just introduced this new feature over to the right where you can actually see the number of views people have looked at the report. So in this case, it's a CMA, so it only has one view. But anytime I create a report in RPR, over to the right, if I click on that little help bubble, you can edit, you can download, copy the link. You have a link that is dynamic, which means that if you share one of our reports and the data refreshes every 48 hours, so you don't have to constantly resend the report to your clients. You can email, you can share to social. All of our reports can be posted directly to social media or to your website. And then, of course, you can view your report activity. So what I want to do is I want to click on the CMA and I just kind of want to show you the finished product. And for that, I'm going to go to my downloaded CMA. And this is obviously not the actual subject property, but I use this as an example because when you are creating a CMA or really any report in RPR, you get to choose the cover photo that you include. So it's very easy for you to upload your own photo. It could be a picture of the house. It could be a picture of the city. It could be a picture of you, whatever you want to include here. This would be the cover letter of your CMA. Now remember, I mentioned the broker's logo. That's why, because front and center on the cover letter is the RPR logo unless we get that broker's branding set up. I'm going to show you how to update your own photo. There's all that contact information that I showed you earlier. If you have special designations, you can also add them to your profile. Maybe you're a GRI or an ABR. You've got the off-market public record database. This is the subject property on the map that we're going to be working with. And this is the Google photo. I don't want this picture to be the cover letter of my CMA. So that's why it's always so important to take your own photo and make that cover page your own. So just scrolling on down, I've got all of the pertinent public record data, the close price back in 2013. There's that RVM that I mentioned at 1.319. You've got a CMA value that I've already gone ahead and created. We're going to walk through that step by step. Public record data, tax data, sales and financing activity. It's even showing you all of the different loan balances. Every state has different data that they share. In this case, we're seeing all of the different loan balances month over month. Now you've got historical photos. I can see what this property looked like the last time it was listed. And I also now, once I go through the process of creating the CMA, there's the subject property on the map. And I did pick this property because it backs up to a busy road. And I'm going to show you to find out how busy that road really is. And then every one of these little circles that you see are comparables that I selected in the area of 13537 Morning Mist. Now, when I create a CMA, I always include active, pending, and closed properties. I like to throw in a mix. I like to at least have 3 active, 3 pending, and 3 solds. You want to find that balance between having way too many recently sold properties and the ones that most align with the subject property that you're analyzing. But you can see here, you've got all of these different comps all laid out beautifully for me. And then this is kind of another example of what you're going to get through your CMA. Now, this CMA that I created is 47 pages. You guys are not going to want to show up to a listing appointment or to a buyer presentation with a 47-page report. So you can go in and you can refine the pages. You can take out some of ours. You can even add your own pages. But you can see the comps that I picked under contract. This guy just closed 0.13 miles away on July 23rd, and this one is active. So all of these properties I was able to pull in to my CMA, gives me a nice side-by-side view. And then as I scroll down, every comp that I picked is going to give me a full page with the side-by-side listing data, public record data, and it's going to show me the listing information, lot size, roofing information, all of that good stuff. So that's why I like to say I think our CMA is one of the most comprehensive CMAs available because it includes all of that great data. Now I'm going to go back into my location bar. Again, we're looking at the RPR homepage. If you've never been on RPR before, we're going to just kind of start with our location tab. I'm going to go ahead and enter in my subject property. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is clear out my CMA. So on this blue bar, you are looking at property information, and this tab is going to take us to everything that we need to research prior to crafting the CMA. And what I mean by that, traffic counts, flood zones, school data, anything that could have an impact on my suggested list price. Because remember, this is an off-market property. But again, I could still access all of that info if it was an actively listed property. So we're going to begin with our property information, then we're going to look at the map. We're going to look at the market trend data. We're going to look at the median price per square foot in your area, and we're going to apply that to this subject property and kind of see where we land. We're going to refine the value. The valuation for Morning Mist is 1.319. But if you don't agree with that, all we do is click into that refine value tool and we can go ahead and make our own adjustments. Now that refined value, we're going to go through the process. Other realtors will not see the work that you do in RPR. So even though you refine the value, it will be for your eyes only. Other people will not see that. Now you can also choose to include or exclude your refinements in your CMA, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then you've got your CMA. We're going to come back to that. You've also got neighborhood data and then my updates. This is where you can add your own photos. So let's kind of start there. If I click on my updates, not only can I add notes, I noticed right out of the gate that this property backs to a road, and maybe I want to talk to my seller about that. So you can add notes. We'll click on save. We can add our own photos. Click on photos. All you have to do is add a photo. And then when you select it, it's going to become your report cover. Add photo, select to the left, make it your report cover. Now, one thing I want to point out here is you can also do this on the mobile app. So you're wondering, well, I'm always on my phone. I do a drive-by, take a picture of the property as it sits now, maybe use AI to freshen it up a little bit, polish it up, and then make that your cover letter. Equity calculator. There's your estimated equity. You can access that. And then the most important thing, I always like to talk about this, is your net sheet. When you are going on a listing presentation, it is mission critical that you know how to fill out a seller's net sheet because I can promise you that while they're very, very interested in you and your professionalism and your marketing strategy and your price suggestion, what they really want to know is right here, the net cash to seller. Now, you can include this in your CMA, or what I recommend you do is that you leave this blank, download it, and then print it out and bring it with you because the worst thing you can do, I think, is have a suggested list price prior to walking through the home. You want to make sure the house presents nice, it's not cluttered, all of the things that need to go into getting this property sold. So what I always recommend is that you sit down with your broker. If you don't know how to fill out a net sheet, talk to your broker or a trusted title agent. Just remember, try not to fill this out. I would bring it with me blank, and then I would completely have my calculator ready to go. Once we have determined the list price that we're going for, then I would go ahead and fill out this net sheet. Now, that's my updates. I'm going to go into my CMA really quick and I'm going to clear this out. Now, the reason I have to clear the CMA out now is because in order to show you the finished product, I had to go through all of these steps. But in order to start from scratch, I need to clear and start all over. So I'm going to clear this all over and move back to my property information. Okay, Umberto, are we doing okay? Any questions so far? Let me pause.
No questions. I think we are solid. I think the last thing was how to find the RPR mobile app. So I just sent them over to the Apple Store, or the not the Apple Store. I'm sorry, the App Store from Apple. I was just thinking of the Apple Store yesterday. That's why.
Okay, perfect. Yes. And if we have time, I can bring up that QR code again towards the end of class. Okay, so we're back on our homepage with 13537 Morning Mist. We kind of talked a little bit about these tabs. We're going to go into each and every one of them, but I want to begin on our property information or our property details page. Just below property information, you can see the photo. And this is why I recommend that you upload your own photo. Maybe you use AI to remove the cars. Whatever you do, maybe you take your own photo and you're lucky enough that the cars aren't in the driveway. Whatever you do, you want to make sure you have a nice professional photo on the cover letter of your reports because this is otherwise what would appear. The other thing I want to point out is you've got your historical tab. Now, if this property had ever been listed before, historical data will show you the previous listing from 2013, 10 photos. I can kind of scroll through and I can kind of see what's going on here with the floor plan. Now, if my seller calls me up and says, hey, guess what? I just did a major renovation to the kitchen. And then I walk into the house and I say, well, I'm not seeing it here. It looks pretty similar to how it did in 2013. Maybe I have questions about what they consider a major renovation. But I always like historical data because you can kind of get an idea of the layout. I also like my satellite view. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. Now, if there is no historical tab here, that just means there's no historical listing information available on the subject property. But in this case, we got lucky. There it is. Now, as I mentioned earlier in our class, this property closed back in 2013 for $685. It has 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, 2531 square feet. Here's your RVM range. Remember, the RVM is your realtor's valuation model, and it's exclusive on the RPR site. It's updated monthly. We've got our most recent update as of July 18th. So before I even start crafting a CMA and pulling comps, I want to look at this RVM 1.319. Not only can I see the valuation model that RPR has assigned, I also can see the range all the way from 1.2 to 1.43. I also can click on view details. And now there's my subject property on the map, really close to this major highway. There's an active listing. This guy's recently sold. And all of these are other comparables that were used to calculate that RVM. So when you get to the point in our class where we're pulling comps, these properties, recently closed, off market, actively listed properties, they're going to be starred for you. So you can kind of say, okay, well, those properties were used in the RVM. Maybe I should include them in my CMA. So you can see all of these different off-market properties. Some are coming to us from the MLS, some are coming to us from the public record database. Obviously, this guy is actively listed but under contract. It's less than a half a mile away. It was listed for 1.245 and it was on the market as of June 10th. So that's probably one I would definitely want to include in my CMA. But remember, all of the properties that we look at in our CMA, if they were used in the RVM, they will be starred for you. So that's a quick look at the RVM. You've got a 5-star confidence score. That's the highest confidence score you're going to get. That means RPR feels really strongly that this is about the valuation for that subject property. But remember, we're going to be able to refine this based on our knowledge of the property, the condition, the location, all of those good things. Now I scroll down, I can see this property was built in 1987, which is helpful because let's say, for instance, you're in an area where there's a ton of new construction, but you're going on a listing appointment on a property that was built back in 1987. Maybe you want to cap the comparables that you're looking at by date range. You can do that in RPR. You also have the tax ID, ownership name. I've got Amy and Cindy. It's a single family property. As I scroll down from my property details page, here are all my pricing tools. I've got my CMA, my refined value again, my equity calculator, and my net sheet. Basically kind of a repeat of what we just saw on the blue bar. Now, as I scroll down a little bit further, there's my public record database. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, there's my square footage. If I'm on the phone, let's see, what were their names? Amy and Cindy tell me, you know what? We actually have 5 bedrooms. The public record says 4. I can go in and I can change that. And again, this is only from my eyes. Other agents aren't going to see. But this happens all the time. Public record databases can be wrong. A seller may not, a property owner may not be inclined to alert the tax collector's office that they actually have 5 bedrooms instead of 4. But for you, if you're getting ready to develop a CMA and a pricing strategy, you want to make sure you've got the correct bedroom and bath count. So you can make those changes here under your changes. I'm going to close that guy out. So all of the public record database, all of that data, fireplaces, 2-story home, 2-car garage, all of that here is verifiable. You can either look at the previous listing or you can talk to your sellers. Now to the right of our property facts, this is where I want to spend a few minutes looking at the map. Already, we've looked at historical photos. That can tell us a lot about the property, the floor plan. When we click on the map, look at how fast that zoomed in. Not only am I looking at my subject property right here on the map, sitting right in the middle of this nice cul-de-sac, I can see the valuations of the entire neighborhood. So over to the left, see this blue square? I can see that this guy just recently sold July 23rd for 1.3 million. And if I remember correctly, this was included in my RVM. It certainly should be. So if I'm working with a buyer and they're interested in my property and they want to know about the house next door, I have access to all of these off-market property details. The other cool thing we can do, we can see here on the map, anytime you're looking at a map in RPR, let's zoom out a little bit, I can see the valuations for the entire neighborhood. Over to the right, I have all of these map tools. Let's talk about some of these. The first thing I want to show you, if I zoom in to my subject property, I like to change my view. Every map in RPR is going to have all of the map tools to the right. If I click on the view, I click on satellite view. Now check this out. The first thing you might have noticed is this very, very busy highway. We're going to analyze this a little bit further because when you're going on a listing appointment and a property backs up to a busy road, depending on your inventory in your market, this could have an impact on your suggested list price. I think we should all agree on that. So I can kind of zoom in. I can see what's going on. There's the satellite view. I can see it's got a pool. Doesn't look like there's a pool over here. I'm not seeing one. So that might be something to consider. Let's zoom out a little bit. Looks like we've got a pool home here. This kind of looks like maybe almost like a clubhouse kind of thing. So what I like to do is look at the satellite view, kind of get an idea of the lay of the land, what's behind this property. If this is something that's going to have an impact on my suggested list price, I need to know about it. So over to the right, all I did was clicked on my view, and you'll notice you have four views. I have the aerial view, which is now going to apply some additional street names. Then I have my road view. Now I want to talk to you about this road. So let's say, for instance, you've got this listing appointment, and this is pretty darn close to this freeway. If I go over to my map tools and I go down to my little car, check this out, the little car there, you have three options. One, you could set up a buyer search by requested travel time. So if you have a buyer and they want to be 15 minutes to the airport or 15 minutes to their place of employment, you could set up a buyer search in RPR by travel time, distance. Both are really popular features. But for this particular class, we're going to look at traffic counts, because if I'm going on a listing appointment here and this house is really close to this road, I want to know how busy this road is. Click on your driving tool, head on over to traffic counts, select all, click on apply, and look at that. In seconds, I can see down on the bottom of my screen, 119,000 cars per day are traveling by this property. Now, is this going to have an impact on my list price? Could be, maybe. Really, really depends on your inventory. If you're in a high inventory market, then it may not have an impact. But if it's a very low inventory market, I'm sorry, I may reverse that. If it's a very low inventory market, buyers may not care about the busy road. But if there's a lot of competition, and this house is pretty close to 120,000 cars per day, then yeah, this could have an impact on my pricing strategy. We're going to find out whether you're in a buyer's market or a seller's market here in just a few moments, so stick with me. So I like to show you guys different things that could have an impact on your pricing strategy. So there's your driving tool. One more time, over to the right, click on your little car, click on the traffic counts. Every map in RPR is going to have all of these different resources. Now I'm going to cancel this guy out. I'm going to scroll down. If you're working with a buyer and they want to know about nearby shopping, restaurants, you can click on points of interest and you can select. Let's say, for instance, we want to find where the closest restaurants are. Check that out. So if my buyer is curious about this property and the proximity to all of the nearby shops and restaurants, there they all are. Let's take a look and see what this guy is. There's a Starbucks not too far away. So these are just little details that I like to showcase because they can really just help you educate your buyers. And it's kind of got that little extra wow factor. You know, you're not just showing them the property, you're showing them the whole picture of the neighborhood. So I'm going to go to the right. I'm going to unselect my points of interest. Let's clear this guy out. And then the last thing I want to talk to you about, we're going to look at schools a little bit later because that definitely can have an impact. I want to come down to our data layers, just below schools. School data we can access from our property details page. I'm going to do that too. But right now I want to look at data layers. This can help you, again, kind of all leading up to that conversation with your client. Median estimated property values. Click on that. I click on apply and look at that. This property is smack in the middle of this deep purple area, telling me that almost all of the median estimated property values in this area are over $1 million. But what happens when I leap across the interstate or the freeway? It drops down. Look at this. All of these properties, the median estimated value is in that 780 to 800 range. So it's kind of an interesting way to kind of understand what's going on in the market, and that can be found under your data layers. Now I'm going to unselect that, clear it out, and now I want to show you flood zones. Let's click on flood zones. I'm going to apply. Now in Florida, where I live, this is a huge variable for our real estate market. Flood insurance is ridiculously expensive. We've gotten crushed with some hurricanes. So buyers need to be aware. This property is not in a flood zone. It's in a low risk flood zone. But if I were going on an appointment and the property was in a high risk, that would be another variable that I would have to consider when listing the property. So just remember, any map you look at in RPR is going to have all of these great tools. You can see flood zones, median sold price, click on apply. We got all of these charts. They're really easy to comprehend. And there's your median sold price, all over 916,000. All of this is going to help guide me. So I'm going to clear this out and I'm going to go back to my property information. Before I do that, let me check in with Umberto. Any questions on the map tools and how we can use them to analyze the property?
None thus far. I think everyone is locked in, as the kids are saying, but no
All right.
questions.
All right, perfect. Go back off camera. We'll go back to our property information. Okay, so we've got a valuation of 1.3. We know we're backing up to a very busy road. We're not in a flood zone, and we know the median property values for an area, and we know the median sold prices for an area. Now I'm going to scroll down. Every subject property in RPR is going to have that map over to the right. And my goal before we get to the CMA is to just kind of research everything that could have an impact on our comparables and how we craft our CMA. Under the map, you're going to see additional resources. This is where you can perform a property-specific climate analysis. So you have two options, climate check and First Street. If I click climate check, watch how easy. I click on leave. Your climate change risk snapshot specific to this subject property. Here is my report. Very high fire risk, high heat risk, significant drought, low flood. We already learned that because we applied the FEMA flood maps. Significant rain. But this is important to you guys. This is important to your market. 76 is a very high rank for fire risk. So just keep that in mind. Whenever we're looking at a subject property, you can create a property specific climate analysis. And this is also something I would bring on my listing appointment. Again, I'm impressing my seller, showing them all of the different resources that I am going to share with future buyers. You have Snap Emit. Maybe you go on this listing appointment and you think, oh my goodness, we need some major upgrades. Maybe it needs some new windows. You could use Snap Emit for some home improvement estimates. And if you're working with clients that are interested in the AARP Livability Index, you also have all of these under your additional resources. Now, as I scroll down, we've got interior, exterior features. All of this information is publicly available info. All of it we need for our CMA or our listing documentation. There's your legal description. We need that for our listing agreements. Now we've got our school data. So what are we talking about with schools? We are sitting in an A-rated elementary, junior high, and Reuben, I think it's a maybe you could tell me, I'm not sure, Umberto, how to say that, but Reuben S. High School is all A-rated. Again, now, if this was maybe a lower grade, that might have an impact on my pricing strategy, but we're looking good here. Nothing here is going to make my price suggestion lower. If anything, it's going to kick it up a notch because this is some pretty amazing schools. Now, if I clicked on this high school, check this out. Remember, I said at the beginning, all of these reports I like to bring with me on my listing appointment. The school data is going to go way beyond your letter grade. You're going to get the average GPA, average SAT, ACT scores. You're going to get the average teacher's salary, which I can tell you is about 3 times what we see here in Florida. The teachers in the first or second year, it's 13%. All of this information could be a positive, could be a negative. You get to share this with future buyers, and you can use this as part of your marketing strategy. You also have school reviews. I like to show this. Read them because you know what? Look at access to the classes gets worse every year. This may not be something you want to include in your school report. Sometimes we get teenagers that didn't really love their high school experience, so you have the ability to include or exclude school reviews. I'm going to go back to my subject property. Let's go back one more step. Just go back to my work, go back to my recent properties, and come back to morning mist. Now, everything that we could possibly need to know about this property is here for us on the property details page. We've already looked at the map. We've confirmed that we're in a good school district. So far, the only thing that I'm seeing that could be a negative is maybe that busy road. Down under listing history, I've got previous listing data one more time. There's the previous MLS ID, the sold price. I could click on that previous listing ID and I could see, again, the previous listing photos, but I also can see the listing write-up. So if I want to understand a little bit more about the subject property that I'm working with, I can go back in and look at all of the previous listing data if it's still available. Also, under public record history, the deed, the mortgage, the tax, I'm going to make a grand assumption here and say that Amy and Cindy are sitting on some pretty strong equity. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we have to look at mortgages and think, okay, well, we know what the valuation is. Are they going to be in a short sale situation? Do they owe more than the property is worth? Doesn't appear so. Looks like we're in good shape. And then we can also look at taxes. When I click on taxes, this is important. The total tax amount is 995.19. You can see the progression from 2025 to 2024. You want to make sure you understand what kind of exemptions, homeowner exemptions. I'm assuming this is homestead. If you are working with an investor, they may not qualify for a homestead exemption. So this is something that you want to research and analyze. There are people in this country that don't pay any property taxes. I will give you an example. My dad is a 100% disabled vet. He does not pay property taxes in our state. It's a great benefit for him. That doesn't mean the next buyer is going to qualify for no property taxes. So it's important to research all of this info. You've got sales and financing activity. There's not a whole lot going on here. It looks like these ladies took out a mortgage back in 2013 for 479.5. Knowing what I know about the valuation somewhere in that 1.3 million, I am not concerned about there being enough equity here. And then you've got your estimated value. If you got a seller and you're saying, well, what's going on in the market? It kind of peaked back here in 2025 and then it dropped down a little bit in December of 2025 and now it's kind of back on the rise. So you can kind of see the estimated value going back 3 years, or you can even go back all the way to 2005 when the property was valued at about 747. Now that's a quick overview of our property information page. So anything that I could possibly need to know before creating my CMA, I have just unpacked. Flood zones, traffic counts, school data, all of that good stuff. Now we're going to jump on over our map. We've already looked at the map from our property information page, but I do want to take you to our market trends. First thing I do if I'm looking at a subject property, I start with my RVM, 1.319, then I go to my market trends. This is going to tell me whether you are in a buyer's market, a balanced market, or a seller's market. And you guys are in a pretty strong seller's market. Why is that? Well, the 4 key details below the slider bar are all going to help you understand what's happening in this local market. You've got 3 months supply of inventory. Your sold to list price percentage is 98.4. Your median days on market is 17. That's time from list to contract. And the median sold price is 1 million. Now you may think, wow, this triangle used to be way over here. The market has shifted a bit in the last couple of years. It's not a buyer's market, but it is not the really, really strong seller's market that we probably saw a few years back where there was no inventory. While I'm on my market trends, I want to show you one really cool thing that you can do, a couple things. Over to the right, if you want to share this data to your website or to social media, you have a one-click share button. Over to the right where it says share, you can take this entire chart, post it to Facebook, X, LinkedIn, or you can save it as a JPEG or a PNG. Lots of realtors are using this as a monthly postcard campaign. You also can scroll down and you're going to look at active listings as of June 2026, sold listing data, sold public record data. Let's unpack this a little bit. For active listings, 115 properties, median days on market for all of the inventory is 34, and the median price per square foot is 519. So again, if you are trying to come up with a suggested list price, if I take this 519 and I multiply it by, let's go back to the property information, 2531 square feet, I end up with a price of 1.313. How close is that? Just by looking at my market trends. Every property in RPR, whether it's actively listed or off market, like this one is going to have this blue bar with all of this info. So click on your market trends, check out your median price per square foot at 519. Median price per square foot for solds is 541. So that's kind of interesting. The price per square foot actually went up from active to sold price per square foot. The other really cool thing I want to show you here on your market trends, and you can access market trends several different places in RPR. You also can access market trends nationwide. So let's say, for instance, I've got Andrew. Andrew's on the call today. Andrew's got a seller, and that seller is leaving California. They are decided they are moving cross country and they're going to settle in North Carolina. Andrew can go into RPR and research market trends nationwide. By doing that, he gives his seller data, information, and opens the possibility for a referral. So if you have a listing and they are not staying in your area, research the market where they're headed and join the RPR Connect group, because that is a great source for referrals nationwide. We love a great referral check, don't we? There's your market trends. The other one thing I'm going to show you is your AI scriptwriter. Click on your AI scriptwriter tool. You've got 6 different action items here. We're going to focus specifically on an article. When I select my tone, we're going to meet with a seller. That's going to be a conversational, but you have all of these different tone choices. I'm going to select conversational. And I have sellers, I have luxury home sellers, I have buyers. I'm going to select luxury home sellers. This is a very expensive property. I'm going to select luxury home sellers and I'm going to create an article. Click on your article, and then you have 7 different article selections that you can choose from. Your BuzzFeed, your Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and select my BuzzFeed. Generate the content. The reason I'm showing you this is somebody asked at the very beginning of class about mailing labels. We love mailing labels. You get 2,000 a month, but what are you going to send if you're going to do a direct mail campaign? Start with your market trends newsletter. So there's your market trends article. You had all of those different options, but check this out. Top 5 luxury market trends for 91709 as of June 2026. I could use this as an introduction to my client before I even meet with them. I want to show them what the market's doing. Or if I want, I can include this in my CMA. All I have to do is export it to a PDF. And then when I get to the CMA, I can add this as part of my conversation. Watching inventory levels, evaluate new listing prices, monitor active listings. And what I love about this newsletter, so many different use case scenarios. Use it to post to social media. Use it on your website. It's not only going to bring you market trend data, but it's also going to bring you some information about the community, the local parks, the extensive trails, picnic spots, things that I would never know about your area, but RPR is kind of sharing that with you and your clients. Now, you're only going to see your AI scriptwriter from your market trends. And I like to show this in almost every class because when you click on that, you have social media posts. You can create a PowerPoint presentation, a social video. If I'm going on a listing appointment, watch this. Let's be professional. Let's work with our seller. Let's create a quick PowerPoint presentation. When I generate this content, in addition to presenting a CMA to my seller, I could create an entire PowerPoint. I pick the colors. I'll go ahead and be pink or purple. I'll select my fonts. and then I'll download the PowerPoint. This PowerPoint, if you're meeting with your sellers, look at this. The whole thing is done for me. It took me less than 5 seconds. Let me just bring that over so you can see. Here's the PowerPoint. Current trends in this Chino Hills market. I hope I'm saying that correctly. There's the market snapshot, active listings, days on market, month supply of inventory. There's your market type. You know you're in a seller's market, and all of those key details auto-populated. And then at the end, there's a little information about me. So whether you're trying to build a CMA and you want to craft a PowerPoint to go with it, it's so easy. All I did was pulled up my AI script writer from my market trends. And guys, we have an entire class dedicated to this resource, but there are social media posts. We use the word social media, but all of these cards could be used for your website, your blog, video scripts, if you want to make a TikTok reel or an Instagram reel. All of these are great resources. Okay, we're going to leave our market trends. What did we learn on market trends that could affect our property? Well, we know we're in a seller's market, but we also know that our sellers should expect a little bit of negotiation. They're not going to expect to sell this in, less than a week because there's 3 months of inventory. All of this information we can include in our CMA. Now I'm going to jump over to our refined value. This is where things get really fun. Let's say, for instance, we've got a seller and we are looking at this valuation of 1.3, but our client has called and they are so excited to tell us that they have just done a major renovation. And you're thinking, okay, let's talk about that. So we've got the valuation of 1.319. Down here where it says refining the value by home improvements, right there, you've got a pick list. So if your client calls you and says, I just did a major bathroom remodel or a major kitchen upgrade, or I just got a new HVAC, you can go ahead, add that to your valuation. So let's say, for instance, they said, we just did the bathroom. It's beautiful. We updated it. We select bathroom remodel. It's going to give you a complete explanation of what this bathroom remodel should include if it's to be considered upscale. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to include every one of these features, but it's a good guideline. Most of these things should be there if you're going to include this in your valuation. So your seller tells you that they just did this major upscale bathroom remodel. You have to know when. They said they did it in 2025. Maybe they did it right around Halloween, and they spent $50,000 on this new bathroom. Now, this is a great challenge for many realtors, is how to explain or articulate to a seller that just because you spent $50,000 on this new bathroom, you're probably not going to get all of that money back. So let's watch this happen. I entered in the cost. I'm looking at the information. It all syncs up. They completed this in October of 2025. When I click add improvements, watch it. I did not get $50,000 back. I got $21,000 added to the value. And this data, guys, is at a regional level. So if I click on the little help bubble, it's going to show me the source of the data is Zonda, and it is producing housing data at a regional level. So that tricky conversation where Amy said, I want all $50,000 back, you can show her it's just not going to probably happen. You're going to get about $22,000 for that extra bathroom update. Now you could do this for all of these different categories. Let's see, let's do one more. Maybe they did a brand new window replacement, an upscale window replacement. They did that back in 2024, maybe right around Thanksgiving. We'll go ahead and say that cost us about $35,000. We add the improvement and we got about $29,000. So we actually did a little bit better with the window replacement than we did with the bathroom. Now that's how you would refine the value by home improvements. You could do that by roof. You could do that by kitchen. Maybe they added a new deck. All of these options are available. And it's just a nice way for you to kind of say, okay, well, you did a great job with that new garage door replacement. We completed that in 2025, summertime. We spent $10,000 on that. However, we add the improvement. That doesn't make sense at all. They got 24,000. So we're going to delete that. It's tech, so sometimes we see things that just are a little off. So we're going to go ahead and take that guy off. Hopefully you guys get the idea. This is a nice way for you to kind of educate your sellers on what those updates and improvements are. Occasionally, like we just saw, something doesn't really make sense. So what we do is we go ahead and delete that, and maybe we just talk to our sellers about the new garage. Now you can also refine the value by needed improvements. Maybe you did a drive-by and you see out of the gate that this property desperately needs new landscaping. So we'll go ahead and type that in. And then a cost is a cost. So what would it cost to replace landscaping out there? Let's go ahead and say $10,000. We add that improvement, and now we just lost 10,000 to our valuation. So we're down to about 1.360. But what we've done is we took our original estimate, we factored in the new bathroom updates, we factored in the window replacement, and we also factored in the fact that these folks need new landscaping. And like many sellers, if they're not willing to do it, the buyers are probably going to want some kind of a concession. So this is a way for us to educate our clients. The other cool thing you can do under refining the value, we already looked at the market trends and we know your local market conditions are pretty strong. So we can toggle this guy over. It's not all the way as hot as it used to be, but it's pretty strong. The interior we haven't been into, the exterior we haven't gone into, so we can just leave that alone. Lot size seemed about comparable to when I looked at all of the other properties on the map. But what about that view? That view could be considered maybe inferior because of that busy highway. So I could just toggle this guy down and say, you know what, your view's not quite as good as some of the competition. And all of this is kind of leading us to our refined value estimate. Now that's how we would do our refined value. I am going to once again pause and check in with Umberto. Then we're going to start pulling comps. How are we doing, Umberto? Let me know.
I think we are doing solid. I do not have any questions, but everything seems to be trending along. I think people are really, really well engaged and they're paying lots of attention. Because usually by now we have a couple of, questions, but yeah, no, it's been great, Janelle. I think you have hit every data point right on the head, as I'm seeing you walk through the refined value and all of that. I think members forget sometimes that the refined value tool is there just in case there needs to be some extra adjustments. I actually was talking to a realtor the other day who said, you know what, the RVM was way off, but we had just done a kitchen bath remodel and we didn't, there hadn't been time for the appraisal to come back in. So we did it manually and it came out correct. So they were able to pull the report and do all that good stuff on it. So
Yeah,
it
that's
works
so
really great.
smart. You know,
Yeah.
that you brought up a good point. We get this question a lot. Do appraisers use RPR? They use it all the time. Our CMAs
Yes.
are so good and they use these resources. So appraisers are looking at this stuff. You can choose to include this refined value that you've done in your CMA or not. This could just be for your own
Right.
information, or you can share it with your sellers.
Yeah.
Personally,
There's a There is a good question though from Marty that they just put in. Improvements are less than in past years, question mark. Things are so much more expensive these days. I think they mean, inflation and given the fact that materials and stuff it goes up, if maybe we do have the most updated information.
yeah, so this is updated at a regional level. I believe they update this information monthly, but we might need to do a little bit more research on that. But you're right. I mean, this is a guideline. This is not any substitute for your expertise. But if you do have a stubborn seller and they think, well, I want $50,000 back for this bathroom remodel, you can say, well, that's really probably not realistic. And bathroom remodels can be different, very
Yep,
specific for different clients. So that's what the valuation is
yep,
at this time.
yep, exactly that. Yep, my
Thank
sister
you,
was just
Marty.
Yeah, exactly. My sister was just doing that with her own home not too long ago, and of course, our family sometimes are the worst clients.
Oh, gosh,
And
are
she
they
was
ever?
like, more than 30,000, 40,000 overappraised. So, I
Yeah,
mean, not
well,
overappraised, more than what she should have been listed for. But that's another story for
yeah,
another
that's a
time.
whole other conversation. Family, really, friends and family. Oh, okay. Let me go back to our CMA. We're going to go back off camera. So we refined the value. Let's just go back to what we did. We looked at all of the property details. We looked at the map. We looked at the market trends. We looked at that median price per square foot of 519. That landed us at 1.3. Then we did some refinements based on the upgrades and improvements. Now we're at 1.345. Now we're going to jump into our CMA. So let's go into the CMA process. Super easy. Couple of things to note. It's a 5-step process. Very simple. There's a CMA and then there's an advanced CMA. We do not get into the advanced CMA for the reason that it's more aligned with what an appraiser would use, where you actually have to assign a value to a bedroom, a bathroom, all of those things that you just may not feel comfortable doing. Whereas the basic CMA, just a lot easier, a lot realtors seem to prefer this option a lot more. But you do have an advanced CMA option if you want to kind of play around with that. Okay, so we've got 5 steps. Step 1 is to confirm the home facts. Let's go in and edit that guy and just make sure everything is as it should be. One more time, you can change this. So if again, your seller said, we actually have 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, we could go in and make that change. I'm not going to do that because I feel pretty confident based on my research that this public record data is accurate. The other thing I want to talk to you about, when you're pulling in comps, if this property is in a specific unique situation and you want to add additional rows to your CMA, you can do that. Let's say, for instance, real world scenario. Maybe you're going on a listing appointment and the property's in a gated community, but none of the comps that you're looking at are in a gated community. That doesn't mean that's not important. We can add another row. All you have to do is find your additional field, and then you go ahead and add that. So in this particular case, it's not in a gated community. So you just click on add another row, and then you can edit your own custom facts. These are custom facts that I included: golf courses, 2-story. We can add 2-story. This house is a 2-story home, but maybe a lot of the comps are 1-stories. You want to include that as part of your pricing strategy, you can include that. So just go ahead and just click on add another row, and then you confirm your facts and close. So that add another row is when you are analyzing a subject property that might have some unique features that the comparables don't have, or vice versa. All of the comparables are in a gated community, but yours is not. You want to make sure you're factoring that into the conversation. We confirm our facts and close. Now, step 2 is super easy. We find our comps. We click on find comps. When I go to step 2, you're going to see a lot of info here. The first thing I want you to notice is you can add a known property. So if you want, right out of the gate, you want to add a comparable, you can click on add a known property, enter in the address or the MLS ID. Or you can go down here and just let the system do the work for you. Notice the property type defaulted to single family because that's what Morning Mist Way is. It's a single family home. The property status, you can include all of these statuses or just the ones that you want. Personally, I like to include them all. If there are withdrawn, expired, or canceled listings, I want to include them in my CMA so I can show my seller what not to do. We want to look at what didn't successfully sold. So if there are any, why not include them? It just kind of backs us up with our pricing, right? We want to make sure that we don't have a listing that just sits there for a long time and ultimately just gets pulled off the market. Now over to the right, you can see the map. This little map, there's the subject property. I could draw a shape, I could do a radius, I could do a polygon or a box. I'm going to come back to this. I could create my own custom area if I wanted to, or I could go to the right and I could use a geography. Now this is interesting. I already learned that this subject property is in a very, very desirable school zone. So if I only want to pull comps in that high school zone, I can do that. Elementary and middle, same thing. Or I could pull all the comps in the zip code. If you're in such a low inventory market, and this is not the case for this property, and you have to go zip code wide, you can do that. You can go 10-mile radius from the subject property if that's the market that you're working in. We're going to just scroll down. We're going to come back to this a little bit. Off market date, you can go back 3 months. You can click the drop down arrow. I can go back 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, or I can set a date range. I'm just going to go back the last 3 months. Now, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. My square foot range is 1,800 to 3,200. That's a huge range. And if you forgot, like I've already done, what is my square footage I'm working with? It's 2,531. So maybe 1,800 square feet is too small. Maybe I want to go 2,000 square feet to 3,200. You can customize this any way you want. That was just what was the default. And remember, this property was built in 1986 or 87. So if I wanted to just pull comps by year built, I could select that as an option right there. Totally up to you. If my property has a pool and the other properties don't, I could enter in pool homes under my keyword search. But I'm not going to play around with all of that today. I'm just going to leave it alone. I also could select a price range. If I don't want to pull comps that are over, I don't know, 1.4 million, I could do that here. I could really refine all of these different fields. Now that was step 2. All I have to do now, there's my subject property on the map, is I just click search. When you click on search, it's just going to start pulling properties. So I found 4 sold properties. Now remember, when we very first started class, I told you the RVM and I showed you the list of properties that went into calculating that RVM. And I said to you, if the property was in the RVM and it was going to pull into your CMA, it's going to have a star. That's telling me that I definitely need to include 3266 Soft Wind Drive, 0.13 miles away, sold July 23rd for 1.3 million. I'm definitely going to include that in my comps list. Scrolling on down, I've got East End. This guy was less than a mile away, closed April 30th for 1.3. Square footage is 2784, built in 64, so that's a little bit older. I'm going to go ahead and add it. I'm going to just go ahead and pull all 4 of these comparable sold properties. This guy here shows that it was a public record sold, so that may not have ever entered the MLS. I could also click on the address and get the full property details page. So if I really had more time, I would go in and research every single one of these properties in greater detail. But we've got a pretty good idea of what's going on. We've got a range between 930,000 all the way up to 1.320. So I've got 4 good properties. Now, if I want to look at 5 properties that are for sale or under contract, I can pick and choose the ones I want. Now, this guy has been on the market 1 day, Spur Court, 0.18 miles, listed for 1.289, $642 a square foot, and the square footage is 2010. I'm going to throw that in there. This guy has the blue star. That means it was used in the RVM. I'm definitely going to include that. Olympic View, we'll go ahead and grab that guy. This one down here, St. Martin, this one's almost a mile away. It's a little bit lower. I'm seeing price per square foot, so maybe I leave that one off. And then down here, I've got this one, San Martin Place, also almost a mile away. Maybe I leave that one off as well. Then I just update my valuation and close. All we did was hit search. We selected our criteria and selected search. Let's go back. Anytime you want to go back and forth to any of these steps, you have an edit option. If I click on edit, and maybe I want now to get in here and use some of my geographies, I can do that. So let's go ahead, show you how. If I click on use a geography and I want to find all the comps in that 9 through 12 school zone, look at that. My map boundary just populated. I click on search in this area and oh, did you guys notice? Right off the bat, I can see this school zone. The property values were so much higher than the properties that were up in that further east area. So I'll search in the area and now I got a whole bunch more comps to look at. So you can pull in all of these different comps. Let's scroll down and see. This guy just closed 1.1 miles away, has a pool, 604 square foot, 2,500 square feet. Your built is almost the same. I'm adding that guy. Sure thing. Why not? And then this one here, a little bit further away too, but still good square footage, same year built. I'm going to pull that one in as well. Now that's how we would use our geography. Let's go ahead and reset the map. I also want to kind of show you how to do a radius search. So let's clear this out. There's my subject property. Let me see if I can refresh this screen and get rid of all of those properties. Sometimes it gets hung up. Let's go back to our edit button. Okay, so we're back to our subject property. If I need to go further out, okay, maybe I draw a shape. I grab my radius tool. I can go out 3 miles, 5 miles. I can go as far as I want. Totally up to you. Use your radius button. We'll go out 2 miles. And now we search in this area. And it's going to pull out all of these additional comps. And again, maybe I don't want to include these on the top right of my screen. Maybe I want to kind of focus on this area because I already learned that these property values are significantly higher for some reason than this area on the top right. So that's how we would use our geographies. Remember, all of these options, zip codes, big neighborhoods, little neighborhoods, school zones. We can draw a shape. If I'm going to try to do this, I'm not great at it, but if we draw our box, we can just go ahead and, well, no, you know what? Let's do a polygon. That's a little bit easier. So if I want, oh, there we go. 1, 2, and then I just kind of zone in on that area. You kind of have to play around with it, but you get the idea. You have all of these different shapes that you can choose from. And the goal here would be to just really kind of focus in on these properties that are kind of south of this freeway. We reset the map. We're good to go. We've got a nice range based on these comps, somewhere between 1.03 and 1.62. Now I'm going to update my valuation and close. We still have about 15 minutes, so I'm hoping you guys are doing okay out there. If there are any questions, just shout them out to Umberto and we will answer them live. Okay, so step 3 is to adjust our comps. Now this is where we kind of get into the nitty gritty. There's Morning Mist. There's my subject property over to the left. Single family, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, 2,500 square feet. Down at the bottom, remember, I added those extra fields. This is not in a gated community. It is a 2-story home. What I would do now with these 7 comps that I've pulled is first thing I like to do is rearrange them. I like to sort them, and that's just the way I think, is I like to sort them by status. So I'd like to take the active and I put them first. So this one here on Spur Court that just came on the market yesterday for 1.289, I'm going to put this in first position. And I'm going to kind of go through and do that for all of these. I want to find any other active properties and I'm going to rearrange them a little bit just so it's easier for me to explain to my client when I'm sitting in front of them. Okay, so I've got them reorganized, active, under contract, active. We could put this guy second. The next thing I want to do is a side-by-side comparison. So my valuation for Morning Mist is right now, based on the comps that I chose, 1.273. But my job is not done. I did a lot of research before I got to this point. I know a lot about this property. What I need to do now is learn a little bit more about the comps. So a few things. 3508 Spur Court. If I click on bigger photos, I can kind of scroll through and see all of the different photos that are available. This house looks beautiful. I can see it came on the market yesterday. It's very close in proximity. However, look at this, guys. It's got 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, and only 2,010 square feet. My job here is pretty simple at this point. This comparable has 3 bedrooms. My subject only, I'm sorry, three-car garages. My subject only has 2, but it's smaller and it has a missing bathroom. So what I have to decide, it's also 10 years older. Is this subject or this comparable at 3508 equal to, better, or less than my subject property? And in this case, I'm going to say it's not quite as good. It's older by a lot. It's 500 square feet smaller. Quite frankly, I might even want to take it off at this point, but I'm going to go ahead and say it's not quite as good as my subject property. And now look. Do you see the adjusted result? It's now back to 1.319 because I said Spur Court just simply isn't as good. And I'm going to now explain to my seller why I don't think it's as good. So I go down to my notes and I say smaller, older, missing a bath. And then I can decide if I want to include this in my report. And I sure do, because when you're sitting in front of your seller and they say to you, why did you say Spur Court was so much worse than mine? I can explain all of these different differences. Then we go over to Olympic View. This one's also active. This came on the market June 2nd for 1.59. We're going to go through the same process, only this time my comparable has 5 bedrooms. My subject only has 4, 3 baths. The comparable is 3147 versus 2531. Definitely has a 3-car garage, but plot twist, no pool. So that's important. I don't know what it costs to build a pool out there, but in Florida, it's a big deal. So I have some options here. I could say, well, it's not quite as good, or I could say it's a little bit better because it's quite a bit bigger, or I could just say, you know what, it's really kind of about the same. Even though it's got the extra bedroom and square footage, my guy has a pool, this guy does not. So you can decide. What do you think? Do you think this property on Olympic View is a more desirable property? I'm not too sure if people are looking for pool homes out there. I know in Florida, it's probably the number one thing they're asking for. Now I'm going to go back down here. I'm going to show you one more time how to enter in the notes. No pool. We'll include that in my report. So it's so easy. All you have to do is analyze your comparables, make a judgment call. Do you think Green Acre Road, it's sitting 0.34 miles away. It's got an extra bedroom, a lot less square footage, same year built. What are we looking at in terms of our pool? No pool. So I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what? This is way worse. So you have options. I could take this guy off. I can exit this out and remove it completely from my CMA. You would basically just go through every one of these and make your assessment based on the public record facts or the listing facts. We're going to close that out. Whoops, I haven't saved my changes. Thanks for reminding me, RPR. We update our valuation, and now we're going to find out where we're sitting. We're just about done with our CMA. So if there are any questions, please let me know. We ended up searching for comps. We confirmed facts. We made our adjustments. Now, step 4 is to basically just review the CMA. Step 3 and step 2 are really going to take you a little bit of practice, but you've got so many different tools there to help you look for comps. We made our adjustments. Now we review the CMA. And if you remember, at the beginning of class, I always recommend you give a range. The result of my CMA is 1.362, which is very, very close to where I started. But maybe I go out to this property and I see it really, really needs some TLC. It's better to enter in a range. So let's just go in and enter 1.313. Let's do that one more time. 1313, all the way up to maybe 1.4. And that way, you're not really kind of holding your feet to the fire. You're kind of giving a range. And this is the point in the conversation where the seller has some input. Do they want this property sold in a week, or do they have 3 or 4 months? They don't really need it sold quickly. None of that really matters about pricing, but there's always a little bit of flexibility, and you definitely want seller input before you come up with a suggested list price. So I entered in a range, but you could have entered in a recommended price. I'm going to click on save, and that is it. Step 5 is to create our report. Click on create report, and I have all of these different options. I'm going to select my CMA template, but guys, if I was working with a buyer, I could include a buyer's report and I could include my CMA in that. All of these reports are customizable, and as long as you've gone through the 5-step process of the CMA, you can include the CMA in any one of these different reports. I'm going to select my CMA template. Now, every one of our reports are going to be laid out exactly the same way. The first thing we do is confirm the address. We can change the report title. If I wanted to make that the client's name, I could. I'm going to leave it alone, and I'm going to click continue. Now, we've got about 5 minutes left, and we're going to finish this strong. The first thing I want you to notice on the top left of our screen, everybody see the customization? This customize button controls all of this data. There's your net sheet. There's your market trends. There's neighborhood data. Here's our refined value. Here's our CMA. Now, if you do not want to include your refined value, click on the drop down arrow. There's the refinements that I made. Remember the bathroom and the window and the landscaping? Here it all is. But if I don't want this in my CMA, I just unselect it and watch the report. It's gone. So you get to decide, do you want to include the CMA, or I'm sorry, do you want to include the refined value or not? The other cool thing you can do is you can reorganize this data. So if you want to begin with your market trend data, you can drag and drop it. Maybe you want to bring that right up to the property information. This is saying 7 pages, property summary. Click your drop down arrow. Go through it. Do you want the AVM and the RVM? Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't want the refined value. You can select any of these report elements to be included or excluded. You have complete control of your customization. There's your net sheet. Click on the drop down arrow. Do I want to include a net sheet? Let's see. Sure, I do. Do I want to leave it blank? I absolutely do. So there you go. It's a blank net sheet. All you have to do is make sure you know how to fill it out because your net cash to seller is going to be right there. Now, there's my notes, backs to a road. Remember I added that? I could manage my notes. If I want to unselect them, I could, but I'm going to leave that alone. Now remember, customization controls all of this data. There's your cover page. Remember, there's your broker's logo. There's the photo we uploaded. Now, custom pages. If I want to add custom pages, I click on custom pages. This is where you would add your resume. You should add a pre-listing checklist so that your sellers know what you expect out of them before this property hits the market. But you also, remember that newsletter that I created earlier? I can add that. So I add a page. I downloaded that, guys. So let me go to my downloads. Let me find that. There's my article. Specifically, live preview update failed. Okay, that sometimes happens live. There's my custom pages. There's my article. I can view it, rename it, or delete it. And that's it. Remember, customization is going to control all of this. If I click on photos, I don't need to include all of the historical photos. Maybe I just want a couple. I can unselect, and you can see over to the right, my CMA is updating in real time. Now, once you are done with your customization on this blue bar, you can save, you can share, and you can download. If I click on share, I have a link. All of our reports come with a dynamic link. I could email this to my clients. I don't recommend you email a CMA to a client before you've met with them. I always think it's better to just sit down, go through this step by step with them, because if they see something in here they don't like, they may cancel the listing appointment. We don't want that for you. The other thing you could do is post to social media. Now, I don't think you're going to need to share to social media a CMA, but you certainly could download this. Let's go ahead and click on download and see our finished product one more time. And that is going to take us to the 90-minute mark. So let's come on camera and see how we're doing.
So good. I think Marty had one question about the traffic noise with the seller's home and they missed it where it was, and maybe where the estimate of the pool would factor in and if it would account for the price.
Say that
So
one
two
more time.
questions.
I
Two
missed
questions.
that. I was
Yeah,
looking at
no
my
worries.
report that didn't download.
Let's talk about the noise for the seller's home, and we'll before that we'll finish that before we get to the second question.
Yeah, so what I would suggest is that if you obviously we know there's 120,000 cars traveling pretty close to that subject property, I would have a conversation with my seller. There's 3 months of inventory in that market. That's a lot of inventory.
It's
That
getting
could
to a
have an
lot, yeah.
impact. So I would talk to my seller and say, does this have an impact on you? But it could have an impact on potential buyers. So maybe the sellers are used to it, they don't really care, but it's definitely a conversation to have that other buyers might be concerned about the level of noise. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
And did you have a question about the pool as well?
Yes, they were also asking if where they could find the estimate of what a pool would factor in and maybe how much you could account for in the price.
Unfortunately, it looks like our site is struggling, or it could just be my internet connection. I don't know what happened, but
No, I
there,
think I had some issues earlier too, so maybe it's both
yeah,
of us. Yeah.
I know it's not coming up. So that's okay. We're going to report that to our member support team. Sorry about that, guys. There's no estimate for pools in the refined value. So you really have to kind of do your own research. For me, to build a pool in Florida, it's about $130,000. I don't know what it costs out in California, but the best way to answer that question is to call a pool company and say, hey, what do you think it would cost to put a
It's
pool
around
in?
80 or ish in Texas.
Is it 80 in
Yeah.
Texas? Yeah.
Depends on the region in Texas because what the farther north you are, it's a little bit, I think, um pricier. Well, no, it depends. It depends. Yeah. It just depends. That's the best
Yeah.
friendly answer I could give. It depends.
Well, I see Diana is having an issue with an error message. There's a little bug going on that happens. It's a tech platform. Sometimes it
Same here with
happens.
me. I was trying to run a CMA earlier as well, and I was also having the bug. So
I'm sorry about that, Diana, but we're going to go ahead and let our member support team know what's going on. And it could be just a temporary glitch. It happens. Always love it when it happens in a live webinar. So I apologize for that. But I will let you guys know on the home page, you've got the Learning Center. This is going to take you to all of our classes. If you want to learn more about the AI CMA, we've just run out of time. We didn't get a chance to do our mailing labels, and now our site's acting kind of crazy. So we're probably not going to get to do that. But if you go to the Learning Center, there are tutorials on how to build a geographic farm list. You also have live classes where we walk you through how to build a geographic farm list for buyers. We look at renters and we find them, and then we look for sellers. So join us for our prospecting class. Thank you, Diana, for your grace. I do appreciate it. It is tech. Sometimes it happens. I apologize for that. But I'm grateful that you guys hung in there with me. And I am so grateful to Elsie for inviting us on today and to Umberto for being my number one favorite backup person of all time. So thank you so much, everybody. I sure do hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully I will see you in future classes. Thank you guys so much.
thank you all. Happy hump day. Happy Wednesday. See you
Bye
all soon.
bye.